Okay, I think it's time for us to start back. A rather generous 5 minutes, and part of that is my fault, so I apologize. It's nice to be up at this end of the table for the first time in the past few days. I'm really excited about this next session. I'm really pleased that we have Dr. Nora Gueliane. I'm sorry, you've just told me and I've forgotten it. Nora is an architect with a PhD in urban studies. She's affiliated with the School for Advanced Studies in the Social Sciences in Paris. And she works on the social aspects of architecture and urbanism, solidarity and participation. She's written an absolutely fascinating paper. It's completely different to what we've heard so far, but I thoroughly enjoyed reading it. And I think that you will do too, and I can see that there's some wonderful images and maps in your presentation. So sit back, relax, enjoy the presentation, and then we'll have a really interesting discussion, I'm sure. Okay, d'accord.
Okay, I hope. Hello, everyone. I apologize if I have to remark to you. I apologize if my English is not so good as it should be. To be honest, this is my first public intervention with English. So I'll begin in. The geographic scope of this intervention is the Mzab, a region located in southern Algeria, as shown in the map, in the wilaya of Ghardaya. The Mzab, or Irzar Mzab, as locally named, is known for its qsur, Igharman, classified by UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1982. Qsur, I clarified something. Qsur are fortified Syrian cities. The root of the word qsar comes from the Berber word akhsar, meaning the slope. There is no relation with the Arabic word qasr or castle. As are shown in the picture, the cities. There is Aghram Netghardait, the most big qasr in Mzab. This is another photo. We have Aghram Lathizjan, and the Ghardaya qasr Souk. Okay. Okay. So, Mzab is a region that combines social, doctrinal, institutional, linguistic, human, and historical complexity to point that is found nowhere else in Algeria. From a social and doctrinal point of view, Irzan Mzab is historically occupied by a double minority. It's a doctrinal and ethnic minority named Mozabits or Imzabian. Zenata Berbers speaking a particular variant of Tamazight, that is Tamzabt. Tamazight is a Berber language in North Africa. One on the doctrinal level, and until most Algerians on Sunni Malikite Islam, Mozabits are Ibadites Muslims. Institutionally, the community is known for its traditional institutions that are still alive and perfectly functional until our days. They coexist with the institutions of the Algerian Republic as well as with each other. These institutions have a big importance for the Mozabits, and they control they control the religious, social, economic, and political life in Mzab. As I represented in the diagram, at bottom we have a family, and Tuddar is the large family. Then we have Ashira or Ta'shirt. Ta'shirt is composed from all families with common ancestors, and at the Qsar skull We have the notable council or جماعة تجمعت مجلس الأعيان. Finally, at the scale of all قصور, we have با عبد الرحمن الكرتي Council, and these are the secular institution. We have also religious institutions shared by the Azaba, more important in the city as the Azaba or حلقة العزابة عزبا at the قصر level, and عمي سعيد Council at the scale of all قصور of Mzab, and Algerians of Ibadi Confucians, no matter where they live. It's this confederal institution have also the rule to manage the Mozabit institutions outside the Mzab. I note that there is Mozabit institutions outside the Mzab, where the Mozabit live. In Algeria or in other countries, we have تجمع controlled by Umana al-Amin, and they have mosques, they have cultural space, they have cemetery, cemetery. They have also a school, Ibadi free school. Historically, the Mzab were often being autonomous and independent for the various powers that have governed Algeria. This situation persisted even during the French colonial period, when community institutions had the right to decide in the internal affairs of the community. The transition of the Mzab from an autonomous and independent region to the state-nation that marked the post-independence period since 1962 has not been flexible, and the official state's policies on of the party system, جبهة التحرير الوطني or AFLN, have not always been favorable or even hostile to the regional and cultural particularities, including that on Mzab, of Mzab and Kabylie on North Africa. The situation created a sense of injustice among Mozabits. So this is a summary of the general framework of my study context. I pass to the project. So the idea of this project, social diversity in question in Mzab Valley, spring up during and after my field investigations as part of a PhD, my PhD's thesis. The objective of research was the new Ksur, like you see in pictures. The object of research was the new Ksur, a set of projects carried out since 1990, presented as the first participatory housing in Algeria. They highlight the region's heritage and way of life, the values of bioclimatic architecture, and the cultural environmental data of the Mzab Valley. Some even classified them as a project responding to the demand of sustainable urban development, as was the case with Tafilalt. This is Tafilalt, who was declared an eco-Qsar because he respects the values of sustainable development. The particularity of these projects lies in the role played by the community, by inhabitants, and the traditional Mozabit institutes, in particular social solidarity of the group, both in terms of project financing, choice of beneficiaries, plan designs, site management, and the management of new Ksur after their occupation. There is, okay, so we have Tinemerin, the New Qsar of Tinemerin. It's annexed to Aghram Natizjan. Tefilat 2, it's annexed to Aghram Natizjan. And Tinaam, it's annexed to Aghram at Bonur. So, however, if there is one fundamental question to which I have not been able to answer in the context of my PhD, it's that about the transition from a communitarian form of solidarity to a strict civic and national solidarity. Indeed, I have pointed out that while Mozambiques are very supportive of each other, they have hardly integrated non-Mozambiques into their projects. During my field work, I noted that the New Qsur benefited exclusively to Mozambique populations to the exclusion of the other Algerians residing in the Mzab Valley, including the Arabs who have cohabited as well as not, I will explain this point, with the Mozambiques for several centuries. In fact, this exclusion or spatial segregation was aimed for by the administrative mechanisms of the actors of these projects. It also seems to correspond to a popular which they confirmed that it was unacceptable for them to introduce non-Mozambiques into their project. This position was confirmed and even radicalized with the events, the last events of Ghardaya, conflicts between Mozambiques and Arabs, so ethnic and doctrinal in nature, that took place in several cities in the Mzab from late 2013 to early 2015, causing extensive human and material damage, including 25 deaths. These later events and a long history of complex and difficult cohabitation have led to establishment of segregation, spatial segregation between Mozambiques and non-Mozambiques, even in schools and public space, mosques, souks, and others. This observation led me to question the modalities and conditions of social and urban mixing in these New Qsur, and in so doing to consider how these popular initiatives, I think that they are very good initiatives, but they have contributed to the affirmation of a form of communitarianism that has never been before in Mzab. So I just, no, okay, the last project, okay, problematic. So I have to note that the last events of Ghardaya are not the first. A series of conflicts took place in Ghardaya since the independence of Algeria, and I think that policies or public policies are responsible yes, they are responsible for the situation. I see, for example, in 1975, a conflict triggered between nomads, that means Arabic, and Mozambiques for land belonging in the Ashira of Atizjan. In the spring of the same year, fights also took place in Qsar Gurera between supporter and players during a football match between Arabs and Mozambiques. In June 1985, a conflict was triggered in Qsar Ghardaya, and call for jihad were then heard in Maliki mosques. In 1989, another conflict took place in Qsar Ghardaya following the inauguration of a school on behalf of a Mozambique historian. This caused the dissatisfaction of cities Arabs. They want that school take an Arabic name. In 1990, conflicts broken out in Qasr Barrayan following the municipal and departmental election because an independent Mozabit list had won a majority of the votes. In 2004, the origin of conflict in ACRPS Atmnikish was a plot of land claimed by the two communities. In 2007, at Qasr Barrayan, the results of the municipal election put the city into a series of clashes over several months, and they have 2 deaths. In 2009, it was still a dispute over a plot of land that caused tensions between the two communities in ACRPS Atmnika. Finally, I conclude that such conflicts give a point or a picture of the mental attitude and the situation between the two communities, and the simple neighborhood dispute, like a match of football, can turn into a bloodbath. So it is in these circumstances that each community has found itself withdrawn to its own space in the city. In this part of my research, it is therefore not only a question of dealing with the notion of social and urban diversity in Mzab, but also of doing so in a context that is both particular and interesting, because it's unique in Algeria, a context marked by enormous social, economical, demographical, political, and historical and land issues that two communities are fighting over, in some cases using violence. It is in this context that I will address the notion of social diversity, its perception by inhabitants of the Mzab Valley, Arabs and Mozabites, its challenges, and the possibility of its implementation in this condition or in this situation. So normally I conclude this presentation, and because the project is a postdoc project under development, so I don't have conclusion, I don't have methodology. So I conclude by enumerating confusions that I have and a series of questions that I'm already asking myself, about which I hope you can direct and help me to resolve. The first question concerns the theoretical framework of my project. I'm very confused about the concept that I need to develop. Should I focus more on communitarianism and sectarianism, or civic in the sense of national solidarity or ethnicity, or I should focus more on social and urban diversity or social and spatial segregation, and what are the lengths and limits between all of this notion. Indeed, I feel that I'm trapped between several fields of research, and I have myself using notions that I don't not master for the moment. The other question is spatial separatism automatically synonymous with communitarianism or not? So does a policy in favor of social diversity really make sense if local actors in Mzab doesn't see the need for it? In this, I like to note that in Algeria and in general, we see diversity as a kind of implicit norm, as if it is the right way to live. This normativity appeared as a result of state policies, in particular in the period of the third president, Houari Boumediene. The idea was to approve any regional particularities to favor social diversity with the aim to reinforcing national sentiments, nationalism. Whereas traditional societies, in this case the Mzab, do not perceive the notion of social mix in the same way. For example, in the Qsar, every Ashira or every clan occupied its own space. So there is no mixing between different clans. The same observation applies for businesses, and every type of business occupies its own space. So there is a clear spatial separation of function and clans in the same Qsar. There are all Mozabits, but this does not necessarily imply a social distancing. So we have to, I think, I advance the hypothesis that we have two models in Mzab. The traditional one, which does not see that spatial separatism is problematic in itself, and a normative one imposed by an official policy that aims for social mix. All this leads me to say that perhaps we need to redefine these notions, communitarianism, social mixing, and urban mixing, with reference to the reality of my fields. The other confusion concerning my field study, isn't it more relevant to expand my study over the whole Mzab, including the non-Mozabit, especially since the Nuxur are only one case in a whole process of social and spatial segregation that affects all the Mzab Valley. Is a comparison with the rest of Algeria necessary, since the case of the Mzab is unique, and a comparison will perhaps allow me to understand the reasons of this particular situation. Finally, from a methodological point of view, isn't more relevant for me to approach the subject as a conflict for the resources in the valley, housing resources, land resources, economic resources, etc. In fact, religions and ethnic and historical precedents speeches are only legitimizing arguments for access to these resources. And thank you for your listening.
Okay, so well done, Nora. That was a really good first presentation in English. We wouldn't have known. So well done. At this point, I will say that we are going to have a bit of extra help from Nora, who is going to offer a translation for questions should they be needed, I think.
Yeah.
Yes. But before that, I will share some thoughts. And what I will do is I will also write up some notes for you, Nora, and I will email them to you so that you've got a record of them as well, and then we can have a conversation at some point if you'd like. I really enjoyed this talk, and I really enjoyed the presentation. I thought that it really complemented the paper. The paper was really fascinating. But the first thing that I thought when I was reading it was, what's going on here? What's the contextualization at play? And the first thing that you did in your presentation...
That's what...
It's okay? Yeah. The first thing you did in your presentation is did that. You offered that contextualization for someone who's not an Algeria expert. And I thought that was really, really useful. Broadly speaking, for those of you that have not read the paper, I thought it was really useful to have this paper involved in the discussion, because what it does is it shows once again, the complexities of the debate on sectarianism and communitarianism and the state beyond the traditional arenas that we've been discussing in terms of Lebanon, Northern Ireland, Iraq, Bahrain, etc., etc. So I think it's really interesting and important that you're doing this type of research. It's also, as Morton would say, it's in the borderlands, right? It's something that is intellectually spanning urban studies, political geography, sectarianism, political space, political theory, religious studies, ethnography, and I think that's part of the challenge that you've got moving forward with this piece, but also with your postdoc, to figure out where you position yourself intellectually. But I was reading it a second time, and I realized that I could read this piece in a number of different journals. I could read it in a number of different disciplines, depending on the focus. But you're an urban studies scholar, right? Your PhD is in urban studies.
Yeah.
So then, why don't you use a spatial framework? Why don't you use space as the lens through which you can see all of these different interactions? Because what the paper does is it shows the way in which these communities have come together and moved apart in particular spaces that you've identified. But a spatial approach put forward by the likes of Lefebvre or Doreen Massey would allow you to bring in all these different forces, the socioeconomic, the religious, the identity politics, the physical spaces, the globalization. It would allow you to bring them all together in an interesting analysis that might help you to deal with some of the perhaps theoretical, intellectual difficulties that you're perhaps having. So I wonder if that was one of the things. And as well as looking at the ways in which these different groups are interacting, it would also help you to understand how they are then sort of descending from these communal spaces, retreating back into their own segregated areas. So I wonder if that was something maybe to think about, and I'm happy to talk to you at some point about this. So that's the theoretical part. I mean, I wonder if in your response to this, you could tell us a bit about where you see the paper and where you see yourself intellectually, in terms of which discipline you see yourself contributing most to. Because I think it'd be interesting to hear from you where you see your own vision of the paper and your work. I thought it was really interesting in documenting these different clashes. But what I think would be really useful for the reader and also for the people listening to the paper is if you could articulate a bit more about the processes of the coming together, the processes of the assimilation. What were the policies at play? Who was driving those policies? Who was trying to facilitate the communitarianism? How did it happen? Was it a top-down approach? Was it the state trying to facilitate this, or was it local initiatives trying to bring people together, civil society actors, for example? And then when it all goes wrong in the clashes, what are the processes of it going wrong? What happens to make people then retreat? Is it a collective retreat? Everyone runs back to their spaces? How are those spaces then delineated? How does it become segregated? Is it formally segregated with fences? Is it informally segregated through a set of norms and practices that individuals will try and enforce particular segregated areas? I think there's a lot of different things that can be explored here. And when I was reading it, I was thinking about some of the work that I've done on this type of thing, but in the case of Bahrain. And there were two towns that were designed by the state. One to try and facilitate this communitarian coming together in the 1950s. And it was designed in a way that the urban spaces allowed and encouraged the coming together of people. But then one that was designed much later on when sect-based tensions were much higher that tried to prevent it. that was designed in a way that there were no real public spaces, no real opportunities for people to come together, and the different sort of sub-communities were segregated by roads and roundabouts, so it prevented that type of thing. So I wonder if you could say a little bit more about that in the paper as well. I'm just looking through my notes. And then, at a slightly more meta level, I wonder to what extent, and I'd quite like to hear your thoughts on this, to what extent do you think that urban policies can be used as a means of bringing people together, or do you think that it's ultimately a futile exercise? So, urban planning, can it be used as a positive means of facilitating peace building or bringing community groups together, or is it ultimately something that leads to clashes because of all of these underlying identity-based socio-economic religious tensions? So I think that would be interesting. And the one final point that I'll make on this is, where is the state? I mean, the workshop focuses on sex, communitarianism, and the state. And it just struck me that a lot of this seems to be going on from a top-down approach, but I wonder where the state is in all of this. So I think the paper was wonderful. I really enjoyed reading it. It provoked a lot of thoughts, and I'm looking forward to seeing an updated version that comes out in a journal, a really good journal, which it will, because it's wonderful, and it helps to engage with and answer some of these questions that I and others have been thinking about. So, thank you so much.
Thank you. I will try to respond to your question.
Thank you.
I take note about
of course.
it, but I don't understand all things. So I will do it.
Thank you, Nora.
Ooh, okay.
While Nora's looking at her notes, start thinking about your own questions. I'm sure there are many. What this paper does, I think it raises questions and provokes thoughts about our own different cases in a range of different ways, given the multidisciplinary and really quite complex way that she identifies the way in which these different communitarian groups both come together and then move apart. So I think there's a lot for us to get our teeth into in a range of different ways. Okay, thanks. So we'll just let Nora respond to some of my thoughts, and then we'll open the floor to the questions. But we'll take one at a time so that Laura and Nora can coordinate. Sorry. Is that better? Okay, so I shouldn't move back. Okay. There? That's okay? That's okay? There? There?
So I can talk with French, and Laura will make translation. So for the first question, concernant mon positionnement, je pense que je n'ai pas vraiment le choix parce que j'ai une formation d'architecte en sciences et en études urbaines. Donc, en fait, je pense que tout chercheur qui se respecte, je pense qu'il ne pourrait pas aller empiétiner un autre domaine. Par contre, ce que je pourrais faire, c'est que je prends des éléments des autres disciplines afin de les utiliser dans mon approche de la problématique et de fait enrichir et mieux expliciter les effets que tous ces phénomènes donc religieux, politiques, historiques, ethnologiques ont comme impact sur l'espace urbain et sur la ville.
Okay, so she said that basically she's an architect with an urban planning specialty.
Yeah.
So basically she has to focus on her major specialization, but she will use other elements, other disciplines, and other theories in order to explain and better analyze the spatial environment.
And why did she not use space? The question, why didn't she use space?
Pourquoi tu n'as pas utilisé l'ensemble spatial?
Comment ça
Tu n'as pas utilisé l'espace.
Tu n'as pas utilisé.
Oui, effectivement, parce que je me suis basée sur le contexte de cette situation, puisqu'il s'agit juste d'un projet postdoc, d'une proposition de projet postdoc. Du coup, je n'ai pas eu le temps et je n'ai pas fait la recherche nécessaire, les lectures nécessaires pour voir l'impact que ce contexte a sur l'aspect spatial, sur la ville.
So the question was why you didn't choose the spatial context. So she said that she's only preparing her postdoctoral proposal and she basically didn't have the time to understand the importance or the impact of the global context on the spatial
Ok.
context.
Concernant la question sur les formes, d'où vient ce communautarisme, en fait, la région, pour comprendre la situation, il faut revenir plutôt sur l'histoire de la région. En fait, les Mozabites se réclament une ancienneté, puisque c'est eux qui ont fondé cette vallée, et que les nomades ne sont pas originaires de la région et qu'ils ont été imposés par des politiques étatiques après l'indépendance dans l'objectif de faire un changement de la composition humaine parce qu'on a des enjeux économiques très importants dans la région parce qu'on a le plus grand puits de gaz en Afrique et qui a le quart de la production algérienne en termes de gaz à 40 km de la ville. Et on a aussi des enjeux du gaz de schiste actuellement dans la région, ce qui fait que l'installation des nomades et des arrivées du Nord ont créé une sorte de tension démographique vu la situation minoritaire des Mozabites. C'est-à-dire qu'ils sont en train de se dire on n'a qu'une seule vallée, on n'a pas d'autres vallées, c'est notre territoire, et que là, ils se voient en situation minoritaire dans leur propre vallée. C'est-à-dire, avant l'indépendance, ils étaient majoritaires, et actuellement, ils sont à peine à 39% de la population totale de la région. Donc, il y a un flux migratoire vers la région, et qui a été favorisé par l'État algérien à l'époque, dans l'objectif de déséquilibrer la situation démographique de la vallée. C'est pour ça que j'ai dit dans mon intervention que l'État avait un rôle, elle a joué un rôle dans ce problème-là. Il y a aussi un autre problème causé par l'État, c'est qu'elle a enlevé des terres à des Mozabites parce que tous les terres de la vallée appartiennent à des Mozabites, elle les a données pour des nomades de façon arbitraire. Donc ils ont appliqué la loi de la révolution agraire, une loi algérienne, de façon inégale entre la vallée du Mzab et les autres régions de l'Algérie. La situation a été rattrapée par the next president, mais ça n'a pas résolu le problème parce qu'il y a eu des tensions à cause de l'occupation de ces terres-là. Donc il y a toute une histoire de conflit entre des nomades et des citadins, puis amplifiée par des politiques étatiques arbitraires. Et ils sont après concrétisés par des violences quand il s'agit des violences quand on a un conflit sur les ressources de la vallée.
So the question was, how do you or what might be the reasons behind communitarianism in this region? So basically, she mentioned two particular reasons. Mainly, it was an economic conflict over resources, mainly gas. And she said that it was mainly a governmental or a political policy in order to proceed to demographic change, because the political intervention allowed nomads to come and reside in the region. So in this way, the Aboriginal population found themselves as being a minority in their own region. So the government proceeded to a demographic change as a first step, and then the government used also the agriculture reform as a pretext in order to change the land ownership. So it went from the original population to the nomads.
Yeah. Pour la dernière question concernant le rôle de l'État, donc j'ai déjà parlé d'un des aspects, l'intervention de l'État dans un sens péjoratif, mais aussi quand il y a des conflits, l'État envoie des enquêteurs pour voir la situation, mais ça finit dans des territoires, dans un rapport, dans un tiroir du ministère de l'Intérieur sans qu'il y ait de vraies solutions. Donc du coup, ils sont dans la politique de laisser faire, et voilà, donc ils laissent la région en plus aller éloignée de la capitale, et qu'on a un système vraiment centralisé où l'État ne contrôle pas réellement la situation. Il y a une particularité Omzab, c'est que même si l'État veut mettre en place une politique de mixité sociale, je pense qu'ils sont dans l'incapacité de le faire dans nos médias, parce que les élus locaux ont un lien avec les notabilités, et que les notabilités représentent les intérêts de la communauté. Ceux-ci font en sorte qu'ils font de la pression sur ces élus locaux de la République algérienne, afin qu'il n'y ait pas de mixité sociale. Par exemple, je prends le cas des projets de Nouveau Rsoul. Les notables de Beni Yezgen ont fait en sorte que les terrains octroyés au projet soient des terrains de la zone de Beni Yezgen, pour empêcher un voisinage nocif, par exemple des Arabes ou un équipement de l'État, pour de les empêcher de s'installer auprès de Beni Yezgen. Donc ils font tout pour empêcher une certaine mixité, de mélanger la situation, d'avoir un mélange de la population. Et cette situation s'est aggravée avec les derniers événements, puisqu'ils étaient les plus violents, avec 25 morts. Donc, tous les Mozabites habitant dans des quartiers arabes ont quitté ces quartiers pour venir s'installer dans des quartiers complètement mozabites. Et les Arabes, les quelques Arabes qui étaient dans des quartiers majoritairement mozabites, ont dû quitter leurs biens et aller s'installer dans des quartiers qui sont des quartiers arabes.
She goes back to the governmental role, and she said that in case of conflicts, usually the government would send people to inquire about the conflict, but it's not usually very efficient. At the second, on the other hand, she said that even if the government would like to apply a given policy, they will necessarily be influenced by local leaders or local elites, if we can call them notables. So this local elite will have an influence on those public inquiries and public policies. She gave the example when the local elite would not allow the emergence of a new like village, let's say, or new.
No, this project,
Nyuksur, next to another existing one. So, and another thing, she mentioned that usually the community. So this way, or without allowing this policy, this will not allow also the mixing of both populations. And then she said that there has been a kind of additional schism. So even if they have Arabs mixed originally with other communities, there has been more homogenization of both communities. So Arabs usually living in other communities will go now to Arab villages and the other way around.
Okay. I respond for all questions? Okay.
Okay, there was a question from Tahayan 2, 3. Do you want one at a time?
It's easier to
Yeah. Okay, so we'll take them one at a time.
Okay. Thank you very much. This was very interesting. And building on Simon's note, I guess, about where the state is here, does the state have any coherent policy towards, like, because you talked quite a lot about clans and tribes, like, is there any kind of sort of patronage relationship with particular tribes? Is it following, like, divide and rule policies? What kind of relationship really exists between the state and the tribes in this region of Algeria? Thank you.
Il a dit quelles sont les relations entre l'État et les tribus. What tribe? Mozambique tribe or
All.
Arabic? All?
All of them in general, like, is there any coherent policy adopted by the state towards them?
Okay. For the relation between politics, states, and the tribes in the region, for the outside, the side, the Arabic side, I don't know because I don't work about him. But in the Mozambique side, because they are a very structural society, the state or the government, when he wants something, they contact the two confederal institutions. Attendez. Hop. Oh. Qu'est-ce que je fais? Hop. They contact the two institutions, donc Ami Said Council and Abba Abdelrahman Council, and this two institutions, confederal institutions, has the right to discuss with the government. And the situation is not because the Algerian government is good or comprehensive, no, but these two institutions control the electoral la classe grassroots. So they have very importance to the state. Because where there is something or calamity or problem in Mzab, the government has difficulties to intervene in Mzab, and these two institutions resolve the problems. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple of questions. I'm sorry, but I'm going to speak Arabic and English at the same time so you can understand. Arabic and English.
Okay.
First of all, I heard you saying that you're just working on Mozambique, يعني تشتغلي بس على بني مزاب, and you're not working with Arabs. And if you're working on social diversity and that's your topic, you should do both. You should study both. You should work with both. لازم تشتغلي معاهم because you're working on social diversity and coexistence.
Okay.
يعني ما فماش حل, فهمتي علي, غير انك تشتغلي معاهم الاثنين. Second, you're starting with social diversity as an a priori. يعني بتنطلقي منها كمسبقة أولية social diversity. But in the same time, your sample is the قصور. And يعني الexample اللي تخدم عليه هو القصور. قصور as an architectural prototype is made to make people live in two different spaces. يعني القصر معمول باش يخلي الناس يعيشوا في مكانين مختلفين. لأنه the قصر there is the space inside, there is the space outside. القصر جوا القصر المذهبيين, برا القصر في العرب. In it, historically speaking, we call what you called nomads. الناس اللي سميتيهم nomad, the Arabs, lived outside of the قصر, and them being inside of the قصر irritates somehow Mozambique, and they don't accept it. يعني نتصور إنه choosing القصر itself as a space should be understood إنه the قصر is made not for communitarianism, it's made to separate people architecturally and spatially. The second thing, الحاجة الثانية اللي على مستوى النظري هي الفصل ما بين مش الفصل الاعتماد على ثنائية communitarianism nationalism. This duality of communitarianism nationalism, I think we should be a little bit critical towards it. يعني لازم نكون شوي نقديين تجاهها إنه هل المذهبيين يتحولوا من نوع علاقة ما جماعوية إلى نوع علاقة ما وطنية. This whole process of thinking in dualities, maybe we should go back and try to rethink it somehow, from my perspective at least.
Okay.
Methodologically, the third point that I have is that when you talk about Mozabit, you talk about them as if they are one thing. تحكي عنهم كأنهم كلهم غير قابل للقسمة. And that's not what's happening on the actuality of the reality. You have different Mozabit. You have the reformists, you have the classic ones, you have the ones who wants to actually coexist, and you have the ones who actually wants to get everybody outside of the qsur. You have Mozabit, women who are suffering just to get some sort of acceptance in the community. يعني فما نساء مزابيات إلى حد اليوم يعني إنهم يدرسوا، إنهم يروحوا للجامعة، إنهم يعملوا أي شيء بحياتهم، يشتغلوا في نفس الوقت تكون متزوجة. It's some sort of an achievement for her. So موقفي إنه how can you treat them as a whole, and how can you see them in their complexity at the same time, and so you don't simplify your understanding of the Mozabit community and consider it one thing and one thing only. يعني ما تبسطهاش إلى شيء واحد غير قابل للقسمة. You see what I mean? And that's it.
Okay, I respond. Okay. I will talk in French. Yeah, okay. Ok, donc je prends en considération vos remarques, toutes vos remarques. J'ai juste deux réponses. C'est concernant l'Oqsar. Donc l'Oqsar n'est pas conçu en réalité pour séparer entre les Mozabites et les non-Mozabites, c'est faux, mais séparer entre des citadins et des nomades. Donc dans ce cas-là, je vous donne l'exemple d'Oqsar Ghardaya, qui englobait à la fois des tribus nomades citadanisées, c'est-à-dire Beni Merzouk, une partie des Shamba, j'ai oublié la troisième tribu, et ils avaient des juifs djerbiens à l'intérieur d'Uqsar. C'est le cas aussi d'Uqsar de Gueliane, qui avait des juifs, et les Guerrera qui avaient des juifs. Donc, il y avait une mixité, quoique il y avait une séparation spatiale, mais il n'y avait pas de distanciation sociale. C'est-à-dire que les gens se fréquentaient, qu'ils avaient des relations, qu'ils commerçaient, mais qu'il y avait juste une séparation des clans. C'est-à-dire même au sein des sociétés de la société mozabite, un Enzil et un Asil n'habitaient pas le même espace. Une Ashira X n'occupait pas le même espace qu'une Ashira Y. Ça, d'une part, donc il y avait une mixité, c'est faux, c'est pas pour séparer entre l'intérieur et l'extérieur, c'est pas le même principe, mais actuellement, effectivement, il est dans le sens de la séparation, et c'est pour ça que les nouveaux qsur, pour moi, c'est une forme de communautarisme, parce qu'ils veulent s'isoler, et ce qui est contradictoire avec le principe, un des principes de leur qsur ancien. Ça, c'est un. Deux, je n'ai pas étudié les Mozabites uniquement et que j'ai négligé les Arabes, mais c'est juste que c'est un début de projet postdoc qui est en continuité avec ma thèse et que ma thèse était sur la société mozabite. C'est juste ça, donc j'ai rien exclu. Voilà, pour les Mozabites, vous m'avez dit que j'ai simplifié. Je ne pense pas que j'ai simplifié, mais c'est juste que les données que j'ai sur eux sont... Je n'ai pas pu recenser tous les cas. Je n'ai pas traité de la condition féminine parce que ce n'est pas mon thème initial. Donc je ne sais pas comment les femmes mozabites, est-ce qu'elles souffrent ou est-ce qu'elles sont satisfaites de leur situation. Je ne sais pas. Je n'ai pas demandé aux femmes mozabites si elles sont satisfaites. non, je veux dire, je n'ai pas étudié, je ne peux pas répondre sur la situation. Peut-être si j'étais mozabite, j'aurais pu m'exprimer sur la situation. Mais j'ai travaillé sur des nouveaux projets, donc c'est des projets urbains, et que je n'ai pas eu à fréquenter des femmes. Ça, et deux, je n'ai pas simplifié parce que tout simplement, j'avais à traiter des acteurs des projets et des institutions de cette communauté, mais pas, et les habitants des projets, mais pas recenser tous les cas existants dans cette société. Et effectivement, il y a des réformistes, mais s'il y a bien un mouvement de changement qui a eu Omzab, c'est bien le mouvement, le mouvement pour l'autonomie d'Umzab, et qui est un mouvement plutôt berbériste, laïque, qui veut rompre avec tout ce qui est religion et tout. Donc c'est un peu comme le mouvement indépendantiste en Kabylie. C'est le seul constat que j'ai pu remarquer en Omzab. Mais pour le reste, je ne sais pas. Je reste muette pour ça parce que je n'ai pas fait une enquête dans ce sens-là.
So she was saying that the Ksur, in her opinion, was not meant to segregate individuals or Mozambis from others, but it was more of an urban setting where there is a segregation between urban and nomad populations. And then she considered that traditionally there was no social segregation, but more of a clan segregation. So every clan has its own space, even though they used to trade and they used to visit each other. But she considered that the new Ksur is more, in her opinion, or was created to enhance communitarianism. Secondly, she considered that she does not neglect the Arab neighborhoods or Arab settings, but what she is presenting is more of a continuity to her PhD studies, and it's only a project. So she does not neglect this issue, but it's just a continuity of what she has previously studied. Then she considered as a response or as an answer to being a little bit simplistic, let me use the term, that she considered the whole region or the whole population as a whole and as just a very homogeneous unity. So she said that she was based mainly on the available data and she was dealing with institutions. This is why she considered them as a whole population, and she did not go into demographic or social details because it goes beyond the scope of her work, and especially that is using urban settings and dealing with institutions and plannings.
Merci.
Thank you.